Hello everybody, welcome to another Microsoft Flight Simulator video. Before we start, I want to thank a small number of people who took the time to watch my videos. I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you very much, guys. I have been crafting a series of tutorials and taking some notes and doing some research before recording the video. So this is going to be the first episode of that tutorial series. I don't know how many episodes this tutorial series will be, but we'll see. Haven't planned for that yet. But my intention with these tutorials is to go through some of the systems in the GA aircraft, mostly around the Garmin G1000 units that is mostly found in most of the GA aircraft in the simulation. In the simulator, I'm sorry. So today, what we are going to do is we are going to take a general look to the unit itself and try to see what buttons it has and what the functions those buttons provide in terms of simulation, and just have an overall understanding of the G1000 avionics in the aircraft. Before we dive into the video, if you want to get notified and interested in seeing this tutorial series, I highly suggest you to subscribe and turn on the notifications. By doing this, you will get to see when any video comes out, and I'm planning to post one video today, and then the next episode I believe will be over the weekend, and then Wednesday I will post another one. At the moment I can only shoot 2 videos a week due to my life and personal time and simulation time balance. I don't want to steal any time from my family. So I think that's enough talking. Let's get into the cockpit and start looking at what this system has to offer. Obviously we have to power the aircraft, so let's just quickly do it. Let's turn on the nav lights. Let's turn on the batteries. Let's turn on the beacon, and then let me see if the fuel pump is on. Looks like it is. Yeah. Alright, let's prime the engine and give it a little bit of power. Turn on. Let me just clear this annoying. There you go. We have power. Let's turn on the avionics and let's get to business. I want to start with the unit on the left, which is the PFD, primary flight display, and I'll go through the knobs and buttons it has and what each one does briefly, and then we will switch over to the second one, which is the MFD, multifunction display, and go through that as well. These two units are pretty much identical when it comes to buttons and knobs that they have, but they have some different functions in terms of navigation systems. So let's start with this. From left to right, the button at the top is the volume knob for the nav radios that are found here. So this aircraft has 2 navigation radios that you can tune different frequencies of different stations, whether it's a VOR or ILS or DME. And this button is used to increase the volume because those navigation beacons or radio beacons shoot Morse codes and you can listen to those. So that's for that. This big nav knob is used to set the frequency of the nav radio. The inner dial here, as you see, is changing the frequency before the dot, and the outer one changes the decimals. And when you tune, this is your standby, which is highlighted, and the one over here is your active nav frequency. And to change between two, you have to hit this button with the arrows. It will switch over and you can set another one for standby. When you press on the button, it will switch to the second nav radio, and you can do the same thing over here as well. Going down, this is the heading bug. When you look at the CDI, there is a blue bug over here, and this is used to adjust that bug. And when you press on it, it will synchronize to your current heading, which is 002. The AP button, as you see in the description, is used to engage the autopilot. Flight director is your magenta line that shows you how you need to act to get to your desired altitude. Remember though, this flight director, when you are not on autopilot, does not move sideways in terms of banking when you are turning right or left. It does it when the autopilot is on, but it does not it when you are hand flying the aircraft. Alright, HDG, this button is the heading select mode for the autopilot. So when this is engaged, you set your heading from this bug, and the aircraft will follow whatever heading you set here. The altitude hold mode is self-explanatory. When you turn this on, it will hold the altitude you set through this altitude knob. Like before, as the navigation radio button, the inner dial is giving you thousands, and the outer one is giving you hundreds when you are setting up your altitude. Nav mode is going to get you, when you turn it on, to the source. Like this is VOR1, which is the first nav radio, the active frequency. So this will follow that signal and route us towards that direction when it's on. And you can do 3 different navigation modes. 2 of them is VOR1 and VOR2, and the third one is the GPS, and you change them through this CDI button. It cycles through each one as you click it. VNav is your vertical navigation mode, and there are multiple ways of changing your altitude. So this will bring the aircraft to your selected altitude manually, automatically when you turn this mode on, but you have to set your vertical your altitude before you engage this, and then the aircraft will just try to climb there. Approach button turns on the approach mode, whether you are doing an RNAV approach or ILS approach. This is used to capture the localizer and bring the aircraft down towards the runway following the glide slope. The back course mode, it's not commonly used, I believe. At least I wasn't able to find a runway that has back course. This is simply, what it's doing is, some airports has a single ILS beacon for both ends of the runway, and if you are approaching from one direction and your CDI is showing the completely opposite direction, you hit this back course button and it will flip your CDI when it captures that signal. Vertical speed mode is self-explanatory again. This is another way of reaching to your desired altitude that you set here. How it works is you set the mode to on, and then nose up and nose down, as you see here, is going to change how many feet that you'll climb per minute. For this aircraft, I believe it's ideal if you keep it at 500 feet per second, around 75 knots when you're climbing. Flight level change is another way of changing your flight level, but this time, instead of vertical speed, you are setting a speed in knots, and the aircraft will try to maintain that speed while climbing to your desired altitude. However, none of these units, either on the one on the left and the one on the right, has control over your throttle. So that means when you hit that button, when you set a speed, you have to manage the throttle, whether you give more throttle to increase the power if it's not doing, or if it's falling back on the speed here. So keep that in mind when you are using this flight level change mode. But I find this the most efficient way of changing your altitude and climbing to a desired speed without messing around too much. Alright, we talked about the altitude selector mode, selector knob. Let's go through the buttons at the down here. So the inset one, this is the inset map, and that will display that map on and off, and you can change between topographical data to display on that map, or weather information to be displayed on the map. The PFD button here is going to give you let me turn off the inset to see the screen a little bit more clearer. The PFD button will give you multiple options to put around your CDI. First one being the wind. So this one has 3 options to display the wind information around your aircraft. One is trying to simulate the wind in terms of crosswinds and give you information like that. The other one is going to give you the direction of the wind and the magnitude of the wind, like 2 knots from west to east. And this is the one I like the most, because it will give you the magnitude of the wind, which direction it's coming from, as well as the speed, the wind speed. Or you can turn it off. So that's the PFD button. That's the wind information. The DME is going to put this side display here around your CDI, and this will display the information that it receives from the DME, like the distance to that navigation source when it captures it. Or you can put the bearing for that same navigation source for Nav Radio 1. When you go down here, there is also a second one that you can put on here, and there is a second DME display that you can put on over this side, which I believe is set somewhere else. We will look into that later on. HSI format button is going to change the look of your CDI. You can switch between an arc, like an airliner mode, or a 360-degree CDI, which I like the most. Alright, so that's the PFD button. We looked at the CDI button changes your navigation source, and this ADF DME button is going to allow you to switch between ADF or DME sources and tune to those radio sources. How you get to there is this button here is going to move you around. When you press on it, you enable the cursor, you go down, and then the outer dial is going to change the source with whichever nav radio you want to use for that station. And this menu button unfortunately is not working. The transponder button is your transponder. You can keep it at standby, you can turn it on, or you can switch it to altitude reporting mode or VFR mode, which will insert the VFR identification code, or you can put in the ident next to it, or you can enter your own code by pressing this button, and let's say the ATC gave you a code. You can enter that in by just pressing to these buttons, and when you go back, that will be set. Okay, timer reference. So this one displays some reference speeds of the particular aircraft you're in, we are in the Cessna 172 right now, and it is displaying your V rotate is 55 knots, your Vx and Vy are 62 and 74 knots. In the later videos we will dive into the details of what all these V speeds mean, but you can turn them on like we used the cursor before for the ADF. It will enable the cursor, and this timer is just a basic timer. You can either count up or count down and start that, or you can go down and change these V speeds and turn them on, and they will do different things which we will see in the later videos during the tutorial series. So let's go back for now. Let me clear that and then press this. Okay, the nearest button is going to display the nearest airports around you while you are up in the air, and it will show you the distance to the airport and the runway length, so on and so forth, for the airports that are close to you. And you can scroll down and see whatever airports that are close to you. It will display them all, and this can be a long list, so I'm not going to go through that from start to the end. And obviously the alerts button is going to display the alerts that the unit displays when it flashes, and when you accept it they will be here. Okay, let's go through the right side and see what this side does. I'm gonna start from the top again. So this volume is your comm radio volume. You can increase or decrease the volume of your comm radios. This selector is again going to select between the active and standby source and make the standby active. And this is again used to set up your radio frequencies. The inner one will change the numbers before the decimal, and the outer one is going to change the numbers after the decimal point, and you can make that active by pressing this. When you press on that, it will switch to the second comm radio, and you can do the same setup here too. Like for instance, if you look at the frequency here, 122.9er. So if we dial to 122.9er, it will be at the ground frequency or traffic frequency of the London City Airport. And let's just make that one active and give it a try and switch that. There you go. As you see, now it's tuned to the traffic of the London City Airport. Alright, the next one, the course and barometer setting. So the barometer setting is going to set your barometric pressure in inches mercury. I don't know if there is a way to switch this to hectopascals, but I wasn't able to find it so far. But what this will do is it will set your current barometric pressure, and you can do the same by just pressing the B key on your keyboard, and it will automatically set your barometric pressure like so. The outer one is your course setting. As you see, you can change the course when you are on a VOR source. This doesn't change anything on the GPS mode, I believe. If it does, it should not display here, but it should display over here at your desired track when you adjust this for the GPS, but I don't think it changes anything for the GPS mode. The range is actually going to change the range on your inset map. So what I find handy about this is you can set this to be your map source, and you can go over here and do the same thing with this range button and get closer. If you are taxiing at the airport, this will give you a good good reference of the airport, and you can find your way around if you do this. The D button is going to let you set a direct to course to a desired waypoint or an airport, and when you activate, it will disable your previous display source or a flight plan, if you will. The flight plan you set will be altered and changed if you activate this. As I said, this menu button is not working at the moment. The flight plan button is going to display your flight plan if you have one planned for this flight, or this will allow you to enter one in that regard. So you just bring up the cursor, and then when you scroll from the outer one, it will start giving you numbers and letters, and you can, let's say we want to go to Heathrow from here, so the inner dial changes the cursor to the next character, and the outer one will allow you to dial the characters. Let's say we want to go to the Heathrow airport from here. You will select EG Echo Golf Lima and Lima, and as you see, and then you hit enter, and it will enter it to your flight plan. And if you go and I think now the menu button works here when you are on the flight plan page. Alright, so this is, I will make another tutorial on how to enter a flight plan. I just wanted to demonstrate what this does, so I'm not going to dive into deep detail now, but later in the series I will make a video about how to enter a flight plan using this screen. The procedures button is going to let you to select your approach, select your arrival, your star, and select your departure when you are doing instrument flights, IFR flights like your SID. And what you do is you just select which one you want to change and then enter, and it will scroll through the available ones and display them to you, and you can go through them all and select which one you want to use. If you generated your flight plan through, let's say, SimBrief, you can find that departure and enter it to your flight plan, and when you hit the enter one more time, it will load it. You don't have any transitions. Yeah, when you hit the load, it will load it to your flight plan, and you will probably see it if I zoom out here. But you have to activate the flight plan to do so. I believe it should have an activate button, not here, but through the menu. But we will look into this later. Can't remember how it's done at the moment, or it's not working as it should, but I'll look into that in a later video. So the clear button is for cancel, clear, or remove the entry without making any changes. So that's all about this unit, and let's take a look at the display here, and then we will go on to the next one. The top of the screen is going to show your nav1 and nav2 frequencies and your COM1 and COM2 frequencies over here, and this section over here is called the FMA Flight Mode Enunciator. This will display the current selected waypoint, the distance to the waypoint, the bearing to that waypoint, and what autopilot modes you are on, like we are now at GPS. If I change this CDI source, it will show you what that nav radio is picking as your next waypoint. Over here it will show you what autopilot modes are on. It is showing that flight level change is on right now. If I press heading, it will show heading. If I press, let's say, V-speed, it will show the V-speed and 500 feet per minute, so on and so forth. This section is your bearing indicator and your speed tape and your altimeter altitude tape, which shows also your desired altitude and your barometric pressure down here. The button display, as we discussed, this is your CDI. This is showing you your current heading, your set heading, or your heading box and what it is set to, as well as the other things that we discussed. Let's move to the second screen and take a look at that. I'm not going to go through this stuff over here because that's pretty much the same. What we have here is your map button that will change your map source and add topographic information to your map if you wish to do so, or you can also add the weather information. And the declutter button is going to declutter your view by removing the waypoints or putting them back on. Over here is your engine stats page. Your RPM will be displayed here. If it's a dual engine aircraft, you will see 2 engine RPM displays here. Your fuel flow, your oil pressure, your oil temperature, your exhaust gas temperature, your vacuum, your fuel quantity, and the status of your electrical bus and the engine hours so far of this particular aircraft. Over on the right side, these does the same things in terms of changing your radio frequencies, COM radio frequencies and nav radio frequencies over here. This is again that direct to, and you can find the direct to from here too, like we did on the other side. The outer will give you letters, numbers, so on and so forth, and the inner one is going to change the cursor to the next character. Let's say if you want to go directly to the London Heathrow Airport, you select EGL L and it will display it. You press enter and then you activate, and as you see now we have a direct course from London City Airport to Heathrow, and over here your GPS is now changed and displaying which direction is your selected waypoint or airport is. Okay, flight plan, as we looked before, I wasn't able to activate it here because it's activated through this screen, I believe, but we will get back to this. This will display your menu options, like deleting the flight plan. If you want to store and save it, you can do so. You can remove your departure, arrival, or approach from this page, and this is the selected waypoints at the moment for the current flight plan. Procedures page is the same. You select your approach, arrival, or departure. Let's say if you want to select your arrival into Heathrow, you press on the button to bring the cursor and then hit enter, and then you again press on the button to bring the cursor. Oops, not approach, we want to select the arrival. Oh, the airport, that's not the airport we want. This is, yeah, and we will look into this again. I don't want to spend time over here and lengthen the video for now, but we will look into this in the later videos. Clear, again, this is clear, cancel, remove, and then the enter is to accept your selection. Alright guys, so this is the very basic information about the G1000 units found on most of the GA aircraft and aircrafts in Microsoft Flight Simulator. In the next video, we will look into some of these functions in detail and explain what they are used for, and probably do a flight demonstration for the autopilot modes and what mode does what and which one is for which. So please stay tuned for the next video, and if you are interested in seeing this tutorial series, please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications. See you next time.